Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome back to another live from Between the Ropes TV. Myself, Ray, and my colleague Josh. Josh, how are you doing tonight?
I'm not bad at all, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm sound. I'm good. Just been well fed and fueled, and I'm ready for this live. Yeah, I thought this um tonight we're going to break down the Joe Joyce Christian Hammer fight card. But before I get into that, just want to do a quick shout out and let people know of the guest for the interview we've got lined up coming up this week on Wednesday, Levi Giles. Josh, you just want to give people a little 10, 20 seconds on Levi Giles?
Yeah, well, for those that don't know, we've had Levi on the channel a few times before. We saw him fight live, Christmas time last year,
That's right, yeah.
and he had a little 4-round sort of keep busy fight on Friday, just gone on Fight Zone. He won that to move 13-0, and it's a very big English title fight for him coming next. But we'll get more into that with him on Wednesday.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, we'll go straight into it with the Joe Joyce card. The main event,
Evening.
Joyce against Christian Hammer. I mean, did you learn anything different about Joe Joyce?
No, I mean, for me, the only thing that we learned was when we sort of already knew it, how susceptible he is to getting punched in the face. The first round in particular, the second round as well, I thought, he was walking onto a lot of shots and getting clipped. And don't get me wrong, people will say his chin was phenomenal, which his chin was phenomenal. But I think the flip side of that coin is that when he gets in with the heavyweight elite, can he then take those shots? Say he was in there with Deontay Wilder last night. I think it's a different proposition altogether. I really do.
Yeah, got to agree there. Got to agree. You put him in against any renowned puncher, and I think Christian Hammer wasn't that, was he? For a heavyweight, he was more of the pillar fisted category. You put him in against a Wilder. You put him in with Anthony Joshua. You put him in with even a Tyson Fury. He gets stopped. He gets hurt. I always worry about people that block punches with the face and just can't see the right hand coming, and he just couldn't see. He just couldn't see that coming. Yeah, he got the job done in the end, and he walked them down. But that worries me going forward for Joyce. We've got a few comments anyway. So, boxing historian Davey, how you doing, mate? Well, good, mate. Thanks for joining us. Talking fight boxing. Yes, uh, they've got a show over in Canada, guys. Check out their channel. I've been on their channel a few times, and sometime soon they're going to come on ours. So it's nice to see them in the chat. Dom Turner says, "Well, with KO Joyce early doors." Josh, you have to agree with that.
No, I do. I mean, cheers for joining us, Dom. Dom's a good friend of mine. I agree. I mean, I was actually messaging Dom while the fight was on last night, and I can't see him lasting. A lot's been made about Joe Joyce's robotic style at times, and I really think last night just confirmed it. How he went about his business was just so robotic and slow at times. And he's 36 now, don't get me wrong. So, I do appreciate, after a year out the ring, the broken wrist that he's had that's kept him out as well. It was good to see him come through. The wrist's not giving him any issues. He's also got the ring rust off a bit. I mean, 4 rounds, but, he's still coming with a stoppage. So there are positives to take from it. But I just think what we learned this weekend was that, for me, Joe Joyce can't mix it with the heavyweight elite. We could be wrong, and I still think he's a tough night's work for anybody. And similar to Dylan White, there's some big fights that I'd want to see him in. But I agree with Dom there. I think Wilder stops him early doors. Boxing historians back, yeah, he agrees with us. All the elite heavies stop Joyce, as we've seen last night. It's hit and not. That's exactly it. That is exactly it. You can't just use your face to block punches, can you?
Michael, Mike, Big Mike, how you doing, my man? How you doing, mate? Yes. Thank you very much for joining us, Michael. Good to see you in the chat. This is a question for you, Josh, but also for people in the chat. Do we think Joe Joyce is too one-dimensional for the elites? at heavyweight, because if you look at the likes of Tyson Fury, he was known as a back foot boxer, very elusive. He gets in there for the second fight with Deontay Wilder, and he boxes on the front foot. Now, most of us boxing fans in the UK knew he could do that because he did that early on in his career. But it became a shock to most people on the other side of the pond. Anthony Joshua was known throughout his career early on as a bit of a brawler, power, very aggressive, always on the front foot. He had that loss against Andy Ruiz. He evolved or developed into or attempted to become a back foot boxer. So almost the opposite of Tyson Fury. Deontay Wilder's, well, we know he has that devastating right hand. And to be fair, that was nearly all that he needed. Even Joseph Parker's shown some wrinkles in his game, especially on the Andy Lee. I'm not seeing any of that with Joyce, and I just wonder, maybe am I just talking nonsense here, or do other people think that because he's got Ishmael Salas in his corner coming out that gym in Las Vegas? He's a renowned Cuban coach. Look who he's trained, like Rigondeaux, etc. Some of the Cuban greats. I'm not seeing any head movement, lateral movement, upper body movement. He's just too rigid for me. Josh, what
yeah,
do you think?
I think it comes down to two things for me, Joyce. One, I think, at 36, he turned over late. He's bounced around different camps, networks, promoters. So I do think in those potentially early years as a pro, possibly he has not developed quite as he possibly should have. But also, I think there's a question about motivation for him. He's on the cusp of fighting some big names. He thought he was going to be fighting Joseph Parker. He's ended up with Christian Hammer. What's his motivation really going to be for that? We open this little, section with, have we learned anything? And I think that speaks volumes. Fans are thinking that, and I quite like Joyce. But if we as fans are thinking going into it, we'll learn nothing from it, I think it then sort of makes it harder for him to be motivated, to adapt to new training styles. It could very well be that when we see him get a proper acid test and a proper 50-50 fight, you never know. He could have been working on some stuff in the gym that he's trying to keep in the locker to not give the likes of a Joseph Parker or Dylan White's been mentioned, to not give them new footage to look at so they prepare for a one-dimensional Joyce. And then he may well come and, as you said, the lateral movement, the feints, the head movement.
Yeah.
He may then unload all that, which in that case, then, I think September the 24th, Frank Warren said he'd be back out. Let's be honest, if he started doing all that, we'd be sat here on, the 25th of September saying what a genius Joyce is, praising Ishmael Salas.
Well,
and
I'll have to cut in there, Josh, because Michael Law's come up with a really, really good point. And he says he needs to work on protecting himself a little bit more. I definitely agree with that. But then he says, I think he needs to be a little bit more busy. He's got to be fighting more than once a year. There's a few boxers at the top end in the heavyweight division this applies to. But Joyce, I would have to agree with Michael there, because I think he needs to do a lot more learning because he turned pro so late.
I'm just going to leave
there, Josh.
No, I do. I think, there's so many variables that affect it. And I just think, as we've said on previews for Joyce and Dubois' fights, my biggest worry with both of them is the fact that they're not going to get these acid tests. They're then going to be fighting potential an AJ, an Usyk, or they're not going to be ready for it. It's similar to what we said about Yard with Beterbiev. I mean, more on Beterbiev later, but they're just not going to be prepared. So he's got to start working on these things. And as I said, I do think he could well be working on these things because, like we said, Ishmael Salas, he's a great coach. He knows what he's doing. So it could just be, well, I don't need it to get past the likes of a Christian Hammer, and we might see something come out down the line.
Fair enough.
Agree. Oh, sorry, Ray. I do agree with Michael's point here as well. That particularly the first round, but at times in the second as well, he's got to start faster because like Dom said earlier, in with the likes of a Deontay Wilder, he's not coming out the first round. If he's taking those same shots. I mean, this is a good one, and we just touched on back out in September. Who do we want to see him in with? I suppose. I mean, I'd love the Parker fight. I can't see why it can't be made as a co-promotion. Dylan White's about as well, and it's common
yeah.
knowledge, he's not actually under contract. I'd like to see it. I mean, I suppose we'll put that back in the comments as well. Ray, who do you want to see him in with? But also, in the comments, who do you want to see?
I like to see him in with Martin Bacauley. As well as the two names mentioned, throw Martin Bacauley in there. Martin Bacauli's should be an easy fight to make because he's just not getting fights and he seems to be avoided. Give him the fight. Billy Nelson's always shouting about how good Martin Bacauley is. Put Martin Bacauley in that mix. Particularly because he beat Tony Yoka and Tony Yoka beat Joe Joyce in the Olympics. And that's how Joe Joyce got the silver medal. So I think it's got that sort of, not like spice, but a bit of a backstory there. I'm a big fan of the lad from America coming through, Big Baby Anderson. Is he going to get a shout? Is he going to get seen as too much risk and very little reward? Probably. But I'm thinking at 36, Joe Joyce has got to take those risks because those belts at heavyweight aren't going to be going anywhere anytime soon. If Fury's keeping his WBC, he'll come out and fight again. I don't think he'll retire. And Usyk will more than likely beat Joshua again. So those two will fight each other. And then Joyce will be waiting some more time again. So all of a sudden, by the time he gets those belts, he's looking at, just shy of turning 38. I think he needs to make some, put himself in some risky fights now, get himself tools sharpened up and get himself sharpened up.
Well, that's the point Michael's made as well in the comment section. He's fighting Father Time, which he is. You both bang on with that. And I think the other thing is, I love to hear when a fighter's made enough money that they've not got to worry about a job post boxing.
Oh, absolutely, career. Yeah.
He's gonna. I mean, I'm sure he'll have made a few quid during his 14 pro fights and stuff. But let's be fair, he's going to need more. And with these bigger fights come the bigger paydays. I mean, boxing historian, I like this comment. I'd like to see the Dubois rematch to see how Daniel's adapted since then. He may have the power to knock Joyce out if he gets caught like last night. I'm going to be honest. I think that's a fight we'll definitely see, but I think we'll see it next year. I think everything hinges on August the 20th. And, if Joshua in particular beats Usyk, I think we'll see Fury come back personally. I think, and then at that point, that's then springtime when the football season finishes. I think we'll see that rematch at a football stadium then. I really do. I think September it will be a slight step up on Hammer, sadly. I mean, I don't know, maybe in Otto Warling or, we did a social media post about Lucas Brown after the Junior Far fight. And Frank Warren, when he was asked last night, he said it would be a ranked opponent. So, all of Lucas Brown's crept into the top 10 with the WBA. It genuinely would not shock me to see either Dubois or Joyce, probably more Dubois to be fair, because it would be in WBA, but it wouldn't shock me to see them in with these sorts of people.
Yeah. I think Frank Warren's looking at it from the business model, isn't he? He's wanting to protect Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois for as long as possible to milk that rematch. And then the winner, you can fast track to a world title shot. I think that's the mindset of Frank Warren at the moment. Do I agree with that? No. Do I see his point? Possibly from a business point of view. But that's what it's, that's the avenue for Joe Joyce. But I've got to ask you from, and also people in the chat moving down the card as well. Zolani Tete, wow, what a performance. I mean, we knew he was good. We talked about it in the preview. But did you see that coming, Josh? Because Cunningham was coming into some form coming into that fight.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be fair, we both predicted a Jason Cunningham point win, didn't we? We both were of the opinion that he was on a roll. He's in form. Tete, he has fought, I think, back end of last year. But generally, the thought process was that the form man is Jason Cunningham. And he was destroyed, wasn't he? Let's be honest. In the fourth round, it was a bit of a scary knockout, the way he hit his head off the canvas. Thank God he was all right. So, all is good there. But I was pleasantly surprised for Tete. I mean, I know Frank Warren said after the fight, like in reality, Tete probably moves on to a world title fight. But Jason Cunningham's still the European champion. He's still signed with Frank Warren for what it's worth. And he'll come back. So, I mean, he's 32, isn't he, Jason Cunningham now?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I do think where next, if you've lost badly to Tete, where do you really go from there? Do you know what I mean? Is that a fair comment, Ray, or I don't know? I'm being harsh there.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what people in the chat think because, and Steffi Bull said it in the videos that they played before the fight. If they lose to Zolani Tete, you definitely can't win a world title. It's kind of it's kind of true and it's not. It's true in the sense that if you're not beating Tete, you're probably not beating anyone at world level. But then again, it's a bit disrespectful to Tete because I still see him as one of the top kids that at that weight class. Look, he's been quality, and I think where Zolani Tete isn't getting the credit is because when he beat Paul Butler, he was kind of spoon fed quite weak opponents, and then he ran into John Ruel Casimero, who seemed to be the best opponent he faced since Butler, and he just got torn apart. He probably thought he would walk all over Casimero, but Casimero was still hungry. Casimero was a lot better than his record suggests. And Casemiro's been very good since. He's had a few weight issues, which is why Paul Butler's been escalated to the WBO full world champion. But I agree with you. I think it's very difficult to look at Jason Cunningham and go, apart from domestic level, where exactly can we go? We can't go back to world stage again. But for Zolani Tete, he's right back in that mix. And that's what a win like that does for you.
Yeah, Michael's just dropped in a great comment. Yeah. And I totally agree. It was a fight, I don't know, he possibly didn't have to take. I understand it being a bit of a challenge before potentially stepping up to a world title. But I totally agree. The fight was a little bit peculiar to me. He didn't really need to take that.
I think in his age, though, I think it was brave. And I've just been talking about Joyce needing to take a big risk. So I'm not going to sit here and be hypocritical of Jason Cunningham for doing so. I want to keep the same energy. I think Cunningham, to be fair to him, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, but in fairness, in the spirit of debate, Cunningham's 32 on a really good roll. We're talking about a 36-year-old Joe Joyce who is definitely going to have to wait. Probably at best case, he's going to have to wait 12 months for a world title shot. So he's got to fill that time wisely. In fairness to Jason Cunningham, he's possibly not in that same situation. He may be able to drop on the title shot a bit faster, and he's still only 32. So there is, 4 years is a chunk of time for me. I've got to be honest, Ray.
But in that division, super bantamweight, the belts are with Fulton and MJ Akhmadiev. So they're probably going to have a unification fight for the undisputed. So you could argue he's going to be waiting a while there. Whenever that fight takes place, then that winner will have a mandatory. So it's still a waiting game. So he's probably thinking it's a name on his record to put himself into that mandatory position. It's about manoeuvring. It was a gamble, and it could have been a less important opponent to take, probably. But sometimes, I think for me, had he won this fight, the rewards would have been far greater because of how tough Tete was. A points decision against Tete is an outstanding win. But it's just a gamble. Sometimes you roll the dice and your number just doesn't come back.
Yeah, I mean, this comment off boxing, thanks for joining us again, mate. It's great to have you in the chat. It probably moves us along nicely, doesn't it? I mean, me and you were talking about this one a little bit earlier, weren't we, Ray?
We were.
And we've finally got that. I mean, it's a massive double header in fairness, isn't it?
Tremendous double header. I mean, we talk, for me, when we look and do our review of the year, Josh, we're going to have to hammer just how big it's been for women's boxing with Taylor Serrano in that card. This is the next one for me. This fight, not just for women's boxing needed to happen, but for boxing. I'm putting this in the top 3 fights across boxing that needs to happen, along with Crawford Spence, Usyk and Fury. This fight needs to happen. And to see the core main event be mouth-watering with Michaela Mia and Alicia Bumgarner, I'm really, really excited for that. I really am, because that's a great 50-50. You got the silky skills of Mia, and you got the explosiveness of Baumgartner, who can box on the front foot or the back foot. Plenty of power. It's a cracking fight over in London. I mean, Josh, you sound as though you agree from the chats that me and you had about it.
No, I couldn't agree more, mate. I think this is massive, and that's the key bit for me. I talked about it a lot in the build up to Taylor Serrano, about how it's not just the biggest fight or one of the biggest fights in women's boxing. It's just one of the biggest fights in boxing, full stop. And hats
Yeah.
off to these women. Hats off to the promoters and the networks for getting these shows made, because
Yes.
Baumgarten has signed up to the Zone. No ego, no bullshit that we see often with the males. It's let's just get it on in. Let's be fair, September the 10th. What a card that is!
Yeah.
I just think it's incredible. I mean, let's talk about it a little bit. Me and you personally disagree, don't we, Ray? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm backing Savannah Marshall. I
Not
think
the first time.
Yeah.
It won't be the last either.
Well, I just hope I am ahead of you in predictions this year. Although we've agreed the last few fight cards.
Yeah. Go on. Yeah, you are.
Massively ahead. I think it was Ray. But we have agreed the last few weekends, to be fair. But I just think Marshall gets to her with the power. And Clarissa Shields, she's a fantastic boxer, one of the best to ever do it, let's be honest. But she just hasn't got the power. I mean, the name of her last opponent escapes me, so I apologise for that, guys. But there were so many opportunities watching that fight. She should have took her out, and she just didn't have that power. But Savannah Marshall does. She has that freakish power. I think, it's one of two things, isn't it? Either Shields wins a wide points decision or Marshall knocks her out. And personally, for me, I do think Marshall knocks her out.
This is Michael's point. I agree with you, Ray. If you don't shoot for the stars, you'll never hit the moon. I give Cunningham respect for taking the fight. Yes, Michael, I think for this one for Cunningham is the way I see it now, because of the lockdown, the impression I'm getting is if you're not taking fights, you're sitting on the shelf. At 32, this kid's still in his prime. And like I said before, with Fulton and Akhmadiev, MJ, having 2 belts apiece in that division, he's not going to get a shot at those world titles anytime soon. So is he going to take a risky fight at domestic level or a risky fight at international level? If it was me, I'd rather take the international risk, because if you lose to a domestic fighter, you're all of a sudden you're really down in the rankings. If you lose on the international scale, well, all of a sudden you still keep your domestic belts, provided you can agree that. So because he fought somebody who's not European, he gets to keep his European title. So that's his consolation. But I agree with that, Michael. That fight has to happen, and Josh is giving his breakdown. I'm going to go for Shields, because although I agree with what Josh is saying, Marshall's got the power. What I have to look at is who has she faced. So apart from Hannah Rankin, I can't think of anyone in my head that would think, well, that's a durable opponent. That's somebody that you wouldn't expect to be taken out of there. Where Clarissa Shields' opponents, at least 2 of them have gone on to win world titles. I know Rankin has, but Clarissa Shields has also fought her. So many of Clarissa Shields' opponents have had winning records. I don't think, if you look at Savannah Marshall's record on BoxRec, not many of her opponents have done. So really, although she's really powerful, she's looked powerful against who? Question mark and an asterisk. That's the thing sometimes you have to look at. It's all good looking explosive, but against who? Where Clarissa Shields, perhaps, yes, she doesn't have that power, and her opponents have been technically a lot better, so she's not getting those openings. It's going to be interesting when Savannah Marshall comes forward and she gets those openings. Is she, as Josh rightly said, she didn't do in her last fight, is she going to take advantage of that? Or is she just going to look to score shots, just pepper her, move out the way, use that footwork, in and out of range, back in range? Because this is another thing. I've just broken down the resumes effectively. The other thing that not many people are picking up on is the duration of the fights. We're talking about championship fight for women's boxing being 10 2-minute rounds, the men's 12 3-minute rounds. I think that's a massive difference. I think the shorter rounds favours the Olympic style of a boxer because you're in and out quickly. So somebody like Savannah Marshall will like time to plant her feet, time
Mm.
to cut off the ring, time to land her shots. Clarissa Shields isn't going to give her that time. Clarissa Shields is probably going to have this fight in a big ring and she's going to move around the ring. People will say she's going to run. She may do. And I think Savannah Marshall isn't going to have enough time in the rounds to chase her. So I think that's going to be key as well. I may be wrong, but
No, you are right. The rounds is a big thing. I mean, Stevie Levy last night, her opponent, she said it herself, sort of was saved by the bell in a couple of 3 rounds of her fight. So that is a potential factor. I mean, boxing, great point. There is talk of Conor Benn. There was talk of September the 10th, obviously, when the summer dates slipped back. I don't think that will happen now. I think he'll have to move it, won't he? Because although Conor Benn's a big, big name in British boxing now, I think, Shields Marshall on its own is a big card, a big main event that would rival any card.
Yes, I
Add
agree.
Mayer and Baumgardner in, I don't think you'd want to go against it. And Eddie Hearn has talked a bit about that, hasn't he? How, he tries to keep the clashes to a minimum. The fact that it's at the O2 as well, let's be honest, Matchroom loves going to the O2. He's talked a lot about Conor Benn being on tour, sort of around the UK. He's done Liverpool, Headingley, Manchester. He wanted to get him back to, obviously, London. So the O2 being booked, hopefully that's a sign of, we'll see Conor Benn later in the month. But it's tough because you've got Canelo Golovkin the weekend after. So it does become, when do you go with it? But as fans, we're spoilt now, aren't we? There's that many promoters, there's that many networks putting shows on every weekend. I mean, Ray, you'll back me up. How many we've thought of all sorts of different videos to try and do. It's bogged down in, right, there's talking about current stuff that's going on. The boxing world's booming. So it's a good problem to have.
It is. It's exciting for us fans. I mean, it's costly. I'm not gonna lie. Following all, but I'm not complaining because I love the sport that much. So if we can still get Conor Benn out in October, I wouldn't complain too much. But this is an interesting point by boxing. He says, but Ray, you haven't seen Shields' chin. Neither Savannah, but Shields doesn't have any power. Plus, they were both Olympians. Yeah, that's true. I haven't seen Clarissa Shields' chin tested. And you're right, I haven't seen Savannah's chin tested. Clarissa Shields doesn't have any power. Like I said, she doesn't. But she has a lot of skill that compensates for that. And we've often seen fighters that don't have power but still go on and will win world titles and do well on the world stage. Darren Haney being a prime example currently now in the men's at the lightweight division. They're both Olympians, yes, but for me, there was only the one Olympian in between them, in the sense that Savannah Marshall went to the Olympics. Clarissa Shields succeeded at the Olympics twice. I mean, she won 2 gold medals. Savannah Marshall was knocked out, I think. She got knocked out very early on and had to come home. So she didn't even get to the medal stage. She didn't even get to the last 16. The medal stage, as we all know, is in the when you get to the semi-finals. 2 people pick up a bronze, the 2 losers. She didn't even get to. I don't even think she got to the last 32. I think she was knocked out in the same round as Josh Taylor was, if I remember rightly. I think people like Josh Kelly had gone on further. So I was very disappointed in Savannah Marshall in the Olympics. Apart from winning the World Amateur title, she's not done much internationally in comparison to Clarissa Shields. So for me, when it comes to the Olympians, Clarissa Shields is the Olympian. Savannah Marshall attended the Olympics. That's
Cedric Sports Training. Not seen you in the chat before, mate. So great to have you.
I know Cedric very, very well. Cedric, again, he's been on there talking fights. So Cedric, very, very good to have you on, mate.
Do us a favour, guys, everyone in the chat, if you haven't, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, although I do recognise a lot of your names. So,
shout out to Joe Phillip as well. Joe Phillips in the chat. How are you doing, Joe?
There we go. No, I mean, we'll move on slightly now and let's start talking Smith Brothers, because it's been sort of a very hectic end to the week. Guys, firstly, Liam Smith has signed with Boxer and Sky Sports now. Honestly, so many thoughts spring to mind for me personally because he's potentially on a career best run. Well, not career best, but he's on a very good run. He's looked brilliant. 2 stoppage victories over, a younger Anthony Fowler who was saying, you're all over the hill, you're past it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
let's be honest, Liam Smith showed him levels. And I'm a Fowler fan, but it was an education for him. And then obviously, against Jesse Vargas, who, yes, there was the inactivity, but he's still a seasoned former world champion. And
yeah.
it was a great fight. Smith is in great form. How excited are you about this signing, Ray?
I think it's an interesting fight. Well, there's some interesting fights to be made for him. I'm a bit confused by it, if I'm going to be honest. I think it would have made more sense to stay with the zone, but it kind of tells me that Eddie Hutton didn't really have a plan for him. I just know from speaking to a member of his family in the past just how driven Liam Smith is. And Liam Smith just doesn't take moves like this lightly. So he's obviously been sold a real clear path to getting a shot at the undisputed titles, which is held by Jamel Charlo. I agree with everything he said about those fights. What I do like about Liam Smith is he's very, very good at making adjustments and turning fights around in his favour, turning them into dog fights. And he did classic examples with those 2 fights that you just mentioned there. I can see a number of fights being made. I can see the Eggington fight. I know he's not with Boxer, but I can still see that fight being made. I know he's beaten Eggington, but I can still see that. I can still see that fight being made at some point. He could get Chris Eubank, but I think for me the Chris Eubank one's going to the weight's going to dictate that, and I'm not too sure how much beef he's going to give away as an advantage to Chris Eubank. And I know from the Eubank Brook discussions, Eubank doesn't want to come down a bit more. So I'll throw that one in, but whether that one happens, I'm not too sure. But you've also got Josh Kelly, you've also got Troy Williamson, Metcalf, and a Scout Starby. So there's all sorts of fights that can be made. Even the kid in Australia, Tim Zhu, that's another fight that I can see happening.
Yeah, I think the Tim Zhu fight potentially makes sense. Obviously, Tim Zhu, the split and everything was agreed to fight Charlo. So we'll see what unfolds on that. Sorry, mine went totally blank there, guys. Just a few comments that we'll just catch up with. Michael, great show. Got to do knockout of the week. Well, come on then, Michael. We'll bounce it at you. I mean, potentially not this weekend because it's not been the busiest weekend, but what's been your favourite knockout recently? Vinny Ollie B, great show. Thank you for that, mate. If you are new here, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. And then boxing's back in the comments. Now, we will talk a little bit about Isaac Chamberlain and Chris Billam-Smith. See, the Liam Smith deal, with it being 3 fights for me, obviously they were saying multi-fight, but we know it's a 3-fight deal. For me, it just screams of Eubank Jr. There was talk about it before Liam Smith signed. And I think if that fight's not made at 157, Smith fights at 154, Eubank at 160, 157 is the common ground. After that, I think every pound just plays into Chris Eubank's hands. I really do. Because, Liam Smith, is pretty much a career 154. He obviously makes the weight well. He's in his sort of early to mid-30s, or he would have moved up previously.
Yeah.
I just think after that, it plays into Eubank. I just hope Sky haven't signed him purely to sort of give Chris Eubank Jr. an opponent in this,
That's, and that's what I mean. Like, Liam Smith isn't the type of person to take it lightly. If he knows he's going to be a sacrificial lamb, he wouldn't have made the move. He would have stayed with the zone. He's got some really good advisors in his camp. So I think either he's seen something in Eubank that thinks I can get to him no matter what weight this is, or he's been given a proper career plan, like a proper plan in terms of you're fighting this kid, you beat this kid, you get this kid. The final fight, you win that, either you get a world title shot in that final fight, or you win that final fight and you
Mm.
do get the world title fight. Um, you know, essentially, does beating Eubank give him that world ranking or that shot at
Well,
one of the world titles?
well,
Well, at least so
he's there now
that's a
anyway. He's there now anyway, Ray. Let's not forget that. He's in the top 5 with 3 of the governing bodies.
mm,
For me, if Liam Smith's not done enough, at most he's one fight shy of a world title fight for me. At most, really, for me, he's done enough to earn it. Because when you look at opponents faced, Tim Hughes in line as the WBO mandatory.
yeah.
For me, Liam Smith's done just as much as Tim Hughes when you look at their resumes
Yeah, oh yeah,
recently.
definitely. I would agree with
He's
that.
done
I would
just as
agree with
much
that.
or more. So I mean, boxing is that'd be a great. I mean, ranking Jonas obviously as a main event would be cracking,
Yeah,
but I'd love to see Liam Smith on his chief support. And that's the other thing. Liam Smith signing for Sky, that for me, that gives them another headline act. I rate Liam Smith that highly. I mean, one question, I'll give it to you, Ray, as well, but also for everybody in the comment section. How big a blow is this to Eddie Hearn and DAZN? Because let's make no bones about it. They have lost a few fighters recently, haven't they? Joseph Parker being one of them. We have questioned maybe he's not quite the draw that we all think he is,
I've said that.
because
Yeah,
Eddie Hearn, they'd have got the checkbook out, so to speak. But Smith's whole run with Matchroom for me was a little bit odd. It started, big plans were talked about. Let's get him to a world title fight, and he's had a few fights with Matchroom. It never really happened, did it? It kept feeling like every one of his fights, apart from the Anthony Fowler fight, were the one before the world title fight, and then it was another one before, and it never quite sort of got going, did it? I mean, do you think this is a massive blow? I mean, for me personally, particularly in the UK, DAZN now are starting to run lower on those real headline acts.
yeah. To answer your question, I think he was in danger of becoming another Cal Brook. Every fight was an eliminator, and it becomes demotivating for the fighter, and every fight that then becomes a bigger potential banana skin because you're not motivated because you're not getting that world title shot you were promised. Um, what it does is it strengthens Sky by giving them somebody who sells a lot of tickets and is a big name. All of a sudden, Liam Smith, in my opinion, becomes their best domestic boxer on Sky.
I'd agree.
I would put up an argument with anyone that was to say otherwise. Obviously not aggressively, but in the sense that he's a massive draw in Liverpool. He's a massive draw. I mean, Anthony Fowler's popular. When they fought, Anthony Fowler was getting booed.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you wouldn't have thought that. He's still a big name. His family has still got that reputation in terms of the big sellers. They've got all that history behind them. Um, I don't think Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn's still one of the best promoters. I still think Top Rank technically are the best because of their stable and the fights that they're able to make. But I think Eddie Hearn he's still the best promoter in the UK. I think Eddie Hearn's promoter problem is that his own budget isn't as big, in my opinion, as what we were led to believe. I think it started off massive and then they've made cutbacks. And I think because the zone have a big stable, they've got a lot of not average fighters. I don't want to use that term. I don't want to disrespect any fighter in that way, but they don't have. You see, years ago, Josh, you and I said this. They used to have, you have your headline on your Saturday night, your box office fighters, but then on a Friday night you had your really good domestic fighters, and then you had your shows which were somewhere in between that. So back in the day, you would have like your Matthew Macklins, your Jamie Moores, who were on your European, on your cusp of world title fights. That's how Darren Barker and Carl Froch kind of came. Well, Carl Froch came over from, was already made when he came over. But you know what I mean? That they had those people that were building from European or Commonwealth onwards to world title level. It's that category for Eddie Hearn's sparse at the minute. He's got either those that are at world title level already, and prospects. He doesn't have many in between. And Liam Smith, in my opinion, was ideal for that. You could have really built around Liam Smith. He's given that opportunity to Sky and Boxer, so that tells me there's either no plan for him or no budget for him. So I'd be worried if I was Eddie Hearn.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, mate. I mean, boxing's just put there. I've heard in the pipeline Lerone Richards might go to Sky and Boxer. I
Yeah,
hope
yeah,
that's not true because I'm a fan of Lerone Richards, and it's been a bit. Well, I don't. He hasn't really boxed this year, has he? So he won that he won the European, won the IBO super
yeah.
middle title, and I thought that was the start of kickstarting Lerone Richards. But I'm not too
You
clued up
see,
on what's happened. But either way, he needs
he's a
to
good
be.
boxer, Lerone Richards, isn't
He's a
he?
brilliant
I
boxer.
quite like him. You know, he's another one. He's probably not the hardest puncher in the world, but he's quite slick. He does quite well in the pocket. He's great on the outside. I think he's not a bad fighter.
No, I think he's good, and again, he's charismatic side. With him singing in post fight interviews to his.
Yeah, yeah. Hot cross bun.
Yeah, no, but exactly. But we remember it helps sell tickets. It's an
Yeah,
act. I
yeah,
think now what Matchroom and Eddie Hearn and DAZN, I think the issue is it's sort of teething problems from going by a country mile being the best UK promoter that let's say over the last 4 years have started to branch out. Matchroom Spain, Matchroom Italy,
yeah, yeah,
done a bit in America, but since specifically last June when they left Sky and went all in with DAZN, I think this is now the teething problems of becoming a global promoter as opposed to a British promoter. Because let's be fair, this year we've had less DAZN less Matchroom shows than we have in previous years. For a good few years now, we've got used to having one a month. And I know Eddie Hearn's talked a lot about the likes of Bellew, Brook, and those
yeah,
box office fighters finishing.
yeah,
And now is the time for this generation. Your Joe Cordini, we've seen him step up. We now need to see the same with the Joshua Buatsi, and there's fighters like that. But I just think this year for Matchroom in the UK, I don't think it's been a great year. I think it's been quite good, but I think it could have been better. And I think we've had better years previously. Globally, as he'll say himself, they're smashing it for me. I mean, Taylor Serrano, obviously he's got Canelo. You
yeah,
signed
yeah,
Joshua over to the zone. So there's been some
yeah,
massive wins globally. But I'm not going to lie, for me in the UK, I think we had that electric start the first quarter. Obviously, when they announced that schedule, we had Wood Conlon, the show at Ali Pali with Ryder and Jacobs. There was a fair few fights, and it was a great schedule. And I think this last quarter's fizzled out a little bit for me. I mean, and going back to this point of boxing, case in point, Chamberlain, Chris Billham-Smith. Chris Billham-Smith, he's Eddie Hearn and Matchroom have not. He's put the performances in himself, but they've built him to a point of, let's be honest, where he could now potentially be a headline act, or he's certainly only one or two fights away from being a headline act. And he's now gone to Sky because he wanted his show in Bournemouth. And I know he said
yeah.
himself, Matchroom wanted to do the show in Bournemouth, but because DAZN are a global promoter, it's tougher to get them to agree to it. But I also think I saw a clip with Shane McGuigan, and obviously he's Billham-Smith's trainer, and he said, in his opinion, and I agree, the Bournemouth Arena's 5,000 seats. Down there, they'll sell that out, and he'll have 5,000 screaming fans. That's got to be a better look on telly, for me anyway, than going into the O2, selling 7,000 or 8,000 seats and having chunks of the arena draped off. I mean, am I wrong there, Ray? Or
No,
I'd
I
say
think I think
they're showing Bournemouth.
I think you're right, and this is what Sky should be getting back at doing. Sky were very good at showing your local Friday night shows, which were all over the country, and that's the point I was making earlier on. They were very good at doing that, and that's how these people sort of like who we've got to know now. Lewis Ritson, he started like that. You know, just name a few. Callum Smith grew up in that sense, albeit he turned over, but don't forget he didn't win anything on the international stages as an Olympian. He kind of came over using his surname, and he went on some big domestic bills, and some up and coming domestic bills. This is how Sky's got to take advantage of just how um, many people are subscribed to Sky in comparison to the zone. They've got a marketability, and that's what Chris Billham-Smith is looking at. He's looking at Skies in all these households. Yes, I'll sell out Bournemouth. Isaac Chamberlain's a good opponent for him. He's a good operator, but that's going to look far better than in a half empty or two on the undercard of somebody. So that's a that for me is a no-brainer. But going back on the matchroom point, what I wanted to kind of make across is internationally, yes, there's only been far absolutely brilliant. The last show that they had with Bam Bam Rodriguez, um, that show was absolutely incredible. There was talent all the way through in that show, but he's having a tough time translating it to these shows. I don't know whether it's an arrogance of thinking it's the zone, it's Eddie Hearn, it's just going to sell straight away. It just he just needs to bridge that gap between the prospects and the high end of title holders and that he's got in his stable at the minute, just to bridge that gap, just to give them that all round quality. Because I can see 6 to 12 months time, all those fighters that are on the cusp of it with his own are going to move over to Sky.
Yeah, I think that we might see that pendulum shift back, and a few will go. I do think it'll be interesting as well because Sky have gone big on these Olympians, but depending on how they get used when when their first contract's up, I do think that's when we'll see Eddie Hearn. Right, I need to replenish the stable, and get the checkbook back out. Like you said, when he went with DAZN before it became exclusively with them worldwide. They got the checkbook out in America, didn't they? And they had to be aggressive in the market. We've seen that slow down now, and now he said, we'll pay for the quality, we'll pay for what we want. Sky have now had to be aggressive, and I think that's the it's just the momentum, isn't it? And I do think we'll see that swing back. I mean, boxing, I'm from the Midlands, and I totally agree. We need bigger shows in the Midlands. I know Sky have done a bit in Coventry recently with
they have
their not next gen. They're not called that now. Boxer Breakthrough, and their boxer tournaments. But the Birmingham Arena is not too far from me. It's also not a bad arena. I'd like to see some shows in there personally. So that's a great point. So is this actually. Yeah, nothing. In fact, I would actually disagree with this, but only really to strengthen your point. To be honest, I think it's gone backwards a little bit on this last 12 months. It got to a great start with Fight Camp, and I thought particularly the Parker Chisora 2 card, the fact that wasn't pay-per-view, that was refreshing. Next weekend as well, actually, with Chisora Pulev 2, that's refreshing. That that's part of your subscription. But I think there's been less shows, and I think that's the problem. The Cardiff card with Joe Cordina headlining, I know they had to pay, obviously, Agawa to come over, but top to bottom, that wasn't the best card. And
it wasn't stacked, was it?
No, and I think we've got used to Matchroom putting on stacked cards from top to bottom the last few years. Don't get me wrong, there's an Alan Babbage, and I know people criticise because, boxing-wise, he's not great. But in terms of entertainment value, for a few years now, I've thought Matchroom and Eddie Hearn, they put the best cards on top to bottom.
Do you think they could have done with a Fight Camp this year?
100%. I think it's great. It's I'll be honest. We were on about talking about going to Fight Camp this year with a few of my mates, and obviously it didn't come off.
Yeah.
Just it's a different atmosphere. It's a different vibe, and also I quite like the festival vibes of like 3 in 4 weeks. It's nice to have those. Right, what we got this week, what we got next week, and I quite like that vibe. I know he said they'll bring it back next year, and there's plans to make it even bigger. But not only have we not had Fight Camp, what have we actually got in the UK?
Yeah, I kind of think Fight Camp should have been a must this year. It was a necessity in the lockdowns, but I think it was quite popular, and it was kind of based on Dana White's idea of Fight Island, wasn't it? I like the idea. I heard a rumor. I think it was you that originally told me about this some time ago, maybe about a year ago, that they were going to have it where it was going to be something like some music entertainment was going to be there, because obviously it was in Eddie Hearn's back garden, and I like that idea. Whether they do that next year, as you're alluding to, fair enough, but I think it was needed this year. I know Boxing's just put a comment there saying Fight Camp was needed. Yeah, I've got to agree with you. I think it was.
And sorry to cut you off, Ray. I do apologize, but it could have been done in a way of, right, the headline acts aren't quite there, but I know we've got Dalton Smith and Campbell Hatton August 6th, and that's sort of a prospects card.
Yeah, that's prospect, yeah.
That's how we could have done Fight Camp. It could have been even if it was a 2-week thing as opposed to a 4-week thing, as the stables going a little bit smaller, and
Yeah.
it could have been around building the prospects, and you could have done more, couldn't you? You know, because it's got that more intimate feel for me. You know, fans. I think it was like people were complaining because they were paying £300 a ticket last year. However, as boxing fans, for me, I'd pay that for a ticket if there was some kind of, I don't know, autograph signing, backstage access to talk to
Yeah,
these sort of fighters.
you just got to make a value for money and
Of
get
course
the
you have.
women. I mean, because there's so much of a in women's boxing. There's so much lack of depth across the weight categories. You can get people like Ebony Bridges, that's had about 6 fights and already a world champion. Shannon Courtney, Rachel Ball, bring Rachel Ball back. Rachel Ball's not, because she's been injured for about a year and a half. You can bring her back into contention.
Shannon Courtney's got to be
Chantal,
due.
sorry?
Shannon Courtney's got to be due.
Yeah, Shannon Courtney, not Chantal Cameron, Sandy Ryan from her. She lost last time out. Bring her back. So there's lots of things you can do, and there's other people as well that you can push. Joshua Kabuatsi can be in another meaningful bout.
Felix Cash.
Yeah, Felix Cash, step him up. I know he's out at the end of this month, but for me, he's actually a level above the kid he's facing. You know, there's lots of people we can go through the rankings. At John Ryder, Callum Smith. I know he's had purse bids called out, but this is what fight camp should be used for, bridging that gap.
It also gives you those younger fighters that exposure to media, doesn't it? Because if they're having to deal with different scenarios, it's going to help them on all platforms and teach them how to become better promoters of themselves, which, let's be honest, with Matchroom losing the Sky platform, the pressure really is on Eddie Hearn to sell it, and he's good at it. But if the fighters can take off some of that load and, you know, get their names out there, it's a win-win. I mean, we'll move this one on slightly. You just mentioned Callum Smith purse bids there. For those that don't know, WBC light heavyweight final eliminator, Callum Smith and Matteo Bordelic. I hope I've got that pronounced right. Matchroom have won the purse bids with $1,069,000. I think the second bid was $675,000.
That's right. Yeah. So
I think this is brilliant news. I mean, interesting that was the amount. I mean, I know Callum Smith's a name, and he's going to earn some money, you know, particularly through the Muhammad Ali Trophy tournament, and, you know, his world title fights to Canelo will have been a big payday. But, you know, the WBC have this ruling down that 10% goes to the winner, and then it's 60-40 in Smith's favour for the other 90%.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a decent payday, I think, for Callum Smith, and I'm excited to see him back. I just hope it's soon. When do you think this will fall, Ray? I'm going to call it. I think it'll be on the Joshua Usyk undercard. We've got to be due an announcement on that. I think.
Do you think? Okay. It's possible. If not, I mean, you got to think of when else it would be, but that would make the most sense. I can't see. There's no other fight in the pipeline I can see for him to put it on. You know, does he bring him to Liverpool? Sort of like October time, put on a show down there. Possibly not. I'm thinking now Callum Smith is in that category, which I was just talking about there. He's one example. You need about 4 or 5, to be fair, where you've got those people competing for world titles. So yeah, I would probably say he's going to go on that Usyk bill on August 20th.
But yeah, I agree. I just think, you know, they've still not announced who the TV network is for Joshua Usyk. DAZN are going to have to get the checkbook out, obviously, because this fight wasn't part of Joshua's long-term deal with DAZN. And if we all assumed it'll be
that's right,
and it'll be a pay-per-view. If it's DAZN's first pay-per-view in the UK, certainly anyway, they've got to have a strong card to it. And I just think, you know, if you've got Callum Smith, he's a big UK name, decent name worldwide. He's got pedigree. I just think it's a fantastic chief support. I also think on that card we'll probably see the rearranged Zhang and Hrgovic IBF final eliminator.
Yeah, finally, yeah.
So, I mean, how do you see this one playing out? I mean, I'm going to be honest. I've seen little bits of Bordelic. I don't know too much about him. I just think Callum Smith is I think, of what we saw with his, scary knockout against Castillo last time out, I just think he can still clean up at 175.
As long as Bataviev's there, I don't think he can, because I think Bataviev's just that good. I think Callum Smith is a very good fighter, and that was at 168. I think he's going to be an excellent fighter at 175. I think that extra £7 that he was taking out of his body really hurt him. I think he's a different beast at light heavyweight. I really do. I rate him very highly. I just think he's just unlucky because as long as Bataviev's there, he's going to find it difficult because Bataviev's a monster. I don't think Callum Smith's got the style needed to beat a Bataviev. So Bivol will cause some problems. Bivol's really quick. I think he's got a chance against Bivol. I just don't think he's got too much of a chance against Bataviev. But having said that, Callum Smith's a talent, and I think Callum Smith will do a good job on this kid.
See, for me, Callum Smith, I think he could beat. I stand by it. I think he could beat Bataviev, and I think he could clean up, because I'm glad Michael's just put this, and this leads me on to my next point perfectly. He is suited heavier. As you say, the £7 weight drain. A lot gets made of his Canelo loss. For me, the Canelo loss, yes, he did get beaten up in it, but I think he also looked really gaunt. He looked weight drained, and you hit 30, can't make those weights anymore. And I think the telling point for me was that when he fought, in fact, that was on Joshua Usyk one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was in his back. When he started, you saw him on the scales, and in the fight itself, he looked fuller. His back was he looked like a different fighter, to be fair. And I just think Castillo was a good opponent, but I want to see him I'd have liked to have seen him more active, but I know obviously his partner's had another baby, and, he's had his reasons for a slow start to this year. So I'm interested to see what he can bring in this fight that will give us a bit more of a steer on what he can do. But right now, today, and I could be wrong, obviously, but right now, today, I think he's got the potential to cause Beterbiev a terrible night, because, I stand by what we said in our preview to Artur Beterbiev, Joe Smith Jr. Beterbiev's 37. Age has got to catch up with him. If Callum Smith is rejuvenated as what you'd have to say we think he is today at light heavy, Callum Smith's really fresh. He could catch an age in Beterbiev, and I think he could be taking the unified belts home with him, provided Beterbiev comes through Anthony Yard, which we all think he will.
Yeah, that tough fight with Anthony Yard. I just think that both of them can be. I just think Beterbiev starts a lot quicker than Callum Smith. I think against Beterbiev, you need to match him with that ferocity. And I think the danger Callum Smith is he's so used to being a really effective counterpuncher. If you put Callum Smith on the front foot to be really aggressive, he might leave himself quite open. And Beterbiev could capitalise on that, particularly on the inside. Don't get me wrong, Callum Smith is really strong on the inside, but Beterbiev is just a different beast, different animal. I think his physicality will be too much. Don't forget he's a carrier, where 175er. Although Callum Smith's big and he's strong, I just think Beterbiev just manhandles him. And that's no shame, because Beterbiev's one of the best, but I think he's one of the best light heavyweights we've had for some time, Beterbiev.
No, well, we'll see how it plays out, won't we? I'm sure we'll get an announcement on the Joshua Usyk undercard. And
I wonder what people in the chat think. Do you guys in the chat think Callum Smith's got a chance to beat Beterbiev, or do you think Beterbiev beats him?
Well, let's see what some people come back with. While we're waiting on some answers on that, because I think it will be one of those that you could ask 100 people and it'd be a relatively split camp.
That's it.
Should we talk about Bradis's, I want to say, shock defeat? Yeah. I wasn't expecting it myself. Ray, do you want to break that fight down for us all?
Yeah, I mean, this was a cracking fight. I thought Bradis would win this one comfortably. I'll be honest, I hadn't seen this guy operator. I hope I pronounce his surname right there. I hadn't seen this Australian boy. I hadn't seen him fight before. So I was really pleasantly surprised when I saw him. And I mean, each fighter had their significant injuries. Jai had a broken jaw in two places on either side. And Bradis, I believe, suffered a broken jaw or fracture to his jaw. this was a very good fight, and I was really shocked by the quality of Jai Bradis. Funny enough, you're talking about age. He's 37. Jai's 27, and it was seen as a passing of the torch. But I still thought, in my eyes, Bradis was still number one in the
Yeah.
cruiserweight division. And wow, it's really been shaken up now. Really being shaken up.
Yeah, I totally agree, Matt. I had Brady's pegged as number one, and we've talked about Lawrence Okoli possibly unifying the Richard Riakporhe world title fight, and for me, I thought Brady's was the one to avoid. You go down the Makabu route, but there's a new name there. I'm going to say you've got it pronounced right. I'm not going to try it. I'm just going to say as a channel we've got it right because you have. But definitely a shock win. I mean, we've got a couple of answers now on the Callum Smith-Beterbiev. Michael, thanks for being with us all night, mate. Michael thinks he has a chance as long as he's ferocious from the start, and I think that is the key. I don't think you've got to stop Beterbiev getting into a sort of on the front foot, the rhythm that we've seen. We saw more of his boxing style, didn't we, against Joe Smith Jr. And I think that we need to see Callum Smith be ferocious. I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. Boxing historian, you're still with us, mate. Thank you for that. I picked Beterbiev, mate. I'm not totally sure, to be honest, because Callum's a great boxer, and after the Canelo fight, I'm not sure Callum can beat a light heavy champion. Mate, my words, but just an opinion. This is the thing that I love about this little bit of a debate, because I'm picking Callum Smith, but I'm totally the same. I think it's one of those that you could be sat here eating your words, but I just think I think it's more Beterbiev's age. I'm just thinking at 37, as we've seen with Bradis last night, it has got to catch you at some point,
I just think that he hasn't got that many miles on the clock, Beterbiev. That's the other thing that you have to look at as well. Sometimes you can get to look at Canelo, although I think he's in his early 30s. He has got a lot of miles on his clock, so it won't be long before he kind of peaks. Beterbiev doesn't have that many hard fights. So I can see him going for at least another couple of years. Look at Adonis Stevenson. Adonis Stevenson went until he was 39 before he got those injuries in that fight against, I think it was Kovacic. So it go either way in terms of his age, and he looks after himself. I just think it's how Callum Smith's style and how he starts. He doesn't look an explosive front foot fighter. Or a beautiful back foot boxer you're going to need to beat Beterbiev. He had a good jab on domestic level, European level, but at world level, at the top world level. That's what I wanted to see with him against Canelo, and that's what frustrates me at that performance. I didn't see him dominate the distance. I didn't see him on the back foot, just keeping Canelo at bay and then targeting Canelo's body. Callum Smith's got one of the best left hooks to the body you'll ever see. Go look at when he stopped George Groves. Ferocious left hook. His left hook's quality. Even when you see that shootout he had against Rocky Fielding, again, that was a battle of the left hooks. He tucks up, goes in the inside. His counter left hook's phenomenal. If he could do that against Beterbiev, okay, fair enough, because it is that powerful. But I don't think Beterbiev's going to let him. He's going to smother him. Beterbiev is going to close down that space, close down that distance, and use his physicality to keep Callum Smith from him. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting fight, that one.
No, it definitely is. I mean, we've got some good comments. Boxing historian agrees with you. Yeah, he is a fresh 37, but I don't know. I can't get it out of my head. And I think again with Bradis last night, the fact that happened as well, I'm just like, oh, it's coming. Michael's back. Yeah, he has got really heavy hands. But yeah, you do need to stay out of the way. And again, to be fair, I think it'd be quite interesting to see, both are quite good to the body. And, as Ray said, that left hook that Callum Smith brings, it is incredible at times. So it'd be a fight, and I think we'll get to see it, to be fair. Joel Phillip, he's also back in Beterbiev. Yeah, and that is the thing. We talked about this on Imran's channel, didn't we, Ray?
Yeah, we did. We did.
We've seen monster Beterbiev. as you've put. But we've also now seen boxer Beterbiev, and he has got some boxing ability that perhaps was underrated previously. So
He has, and this is what I mean. He can make it very difficult for Callum Smith because he can cut off the ring, he can close the distance for him. And then what's Callum Smith going to do? I mean, Callum Smith fights quite well backed up. He's really good on the counter. Like I said, his counter left hooks are really sharp. But I think Beterbiev's wise to that. Beterbiev's aggression. Yeah, that's a good point by Michael Order. It could be a battle of the body shot. Now, what I like about Beterbiev is he doesn't just target, he just doesn't headhunt, but neither does Callum Smith. Callum Smith likes to feint, and he feints a lot more than what Beterbiev does. So if he feints, if he gets on the inside, does his damage to the body and gets back on the outside again, uses lateral movement to get around the ring, he's in with a chance. But he's got to be perfect for 12 rounds against Beterbiev. You can't just do what Cam Johnson does and get the upper hand in a round and a half and think you've won the fight, because then, as Callum Johnson will tell you, you get put down on your floor and put out. Beterbiev catches with the people like that. Think of Golovkin, but better and bigger and stronger. Callum Smith's going to be really cute, and he's got to be doing this for 12 rounds. He's going to need a lot of concentration, a lot of energy, and a lot of stamina. Has he got that in him? I believe he's got the potential, but I just don't think he can follow through with it. It's too big of an ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, the light heavyweight scene, I think it's bubbling away, both domestically. It was unfortunate we didn't see Callum Johnson fight this weekend. As I said, I think the plot will thicken there because Frank Warren didn't seem happy. He's definitely not mentioned him in anything I've seen post-fight, in the media scrum after the fight. So I think the plot will thicken, but, there's still, Craig Richards still a tough night's work for anybody. Buatsi, Yard, Callum Smith, then, Bivol, Beterbiev, who knows, Canelo, he's still a pound-for-pound great. If he goes back up there, he could still cause a problem. I mean, guys, those of you that we've still got in the comment section, what do you think in terms of the Anthony Yard-Beterbiev fight? Me and Ray are both firm Beterbiev's going to absolutely demolish him. But I'm just curious, does anybody here think that Yard might pull off a shock? And then we'll wait for some answers there. When is the next live watch along? Well, we were originally talking, and to be fair, we could still do something next weekend for Chisora Pulev. I would be flying solo. Ray is unfortunately, he's moving house. So he's just left me to it. Doesn't care. Just got better stuff to do.
You're more than welcome over here if you want me to run over along. You're more than welcome.
So we could do something. We could do something for Chisora Pulev. I mean, I tell you what, boxing historian. When do you want the next live watch along to be? It's got to be a good fight.
You guys tell us. You guys tell us. Apart from when we're moving house and stuff, we're easy. You guys tell us, and Josh and I will be on.
We'll do it. Yeah, no, I can't actually see Yard beating, I'll be honest, some of the domestic fighters. I think him and Buatsi, I think I'd pick Buatsi, to be honest. The maturity that he showed in his performance against Craig Richards, for me, that went from being a 50-50, maybe 55-45 fight for Buatsi, but now I'm quite confident Buatsi would win that. So I can't see him beating either of them, definitely. Joel Phillips also come back. He's also with Beterbiev. Yeah, it would be an incredible.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, definitely. I also got to see on that Buatsi thing. Buatsi still defensively isn't at that level I want him to be at. So if Buatsi has his defense like he had against the Croatian guy that he fought, like he had a little bit against Craig Richards, he's with Virgil Hunter, and apparently he's listening to him like a student. But defensively, he's still poor. Anthony Yard still got a puncher's chance in with anybody because he can punch. So if he sees an opportunity, he could get Buatsi out of there. So that's worth noting because Yard can punch.
I've got one for you, Ray. Lyndon Arthur. Obviously, we know he's done with Frank Warren. He was hung out to dry in that situation.
Oh, massively, yeah.
He was never supposed to beat Yard. Is he finished? Can he come back? What do you think?
I'd like to see Lyndon Arthur come back. He's a good boxer. I also got to see on that Buatsi thing. Buatsi still defensively isn't at that level I want him to be at. So if Buatsi has his defense like he had against the Croatian guy that he fought, like he had a little bit against Craig Richards, he's a good boxer. I put them in the same categories. I put Lerone Richards in, Craig Richardson as well, Spider. I put them in that category of some really, really good educated boxers, had great schooling, but for one reason or another, whether it's a power or don't have that crossover appeal, they're not getting the opportunities that they need. But he's a terrific boxer, well schooling. Pat Barron's gym in there, or Collyhurst and Moston.
Mm.
Um, I like I said, I just think he's not being handled well. So I definitely think he can come back. I definitely think he can do something on the British scene. There's some mouthwatering fights there domestically for him. And should he do well there, a couple of fights on the domestic level, he's back in contention at world level, or at least to be in a shot to beat somebody in the rankings, to fall into a top 10 somewhere.
No, I agree. I mean, some more good comments in. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know
definitely,
why.
Davey. Drop me a message in the chat, and then we'll cover that show, no problem.
Where have we got? Yes, Michael agrees. Boatsy, he does need some fine tuning, but
It
I just
does.
think he's more complete than what we've seen from Yard anyway. You know, Yard's realistic claim to fame is the fact that he was a few seconds away from possibly knocking Kovalev out, which for me, Boatsy's done a bit more. But Boatsy hasn't been in with a Kovalev, in fairness.
Yeah, good question. I think this is for Lyndon Arthur. Is this for Lyndon Arthur, Mike? Who do I
I
put
think
him
it
in
is
with?
because he's staying domestically. Yeah, so I'd
Yeah,
say
who do I
it
put him in with?
is.
It depends. It depends who he stays with. For me, right, there's two options. You either put him in with Callum Johnson if you keep him on BT. You either put him in with Callum Johnson, or you kind of think outside the box and think, well, there's Craig Richards, who's there, ready to go. So one of those two fights, I'll be very interested in. Um, I think would be a good, not just good comeback fights, but good fight for TV, because they're both big names. They're both coming off, but particularly Craig Richards is coming off that defeat, but the defeat against Bivol and the defeat against Boatsy, and Callum Johnson needs a fight now. It's not just a big fight; he just needs a fight. He's been pulled out of his last two cards. We don't know the reasons. He just needs a fight. So Lyndon Arthur domestically, I can see him getting himself motivated for that. It's difficult to get himself motivated for these Eastern Europeans. So yeah, put him in with either Callum Johnson or Craig Richards for me.
Yeah, I'd back that. I mean, just quickly before I carry on with that boxing story, and thanks ever so much for joining us, mate. We are going to be doing this every Sunday night, certainly for the foreseeable future at 8:30. So everyone remember that and keep that one in the diaries. I mean, just on that one, I agree, Ray. I think, Lyndon Arthur, Craig Richards, Callum Johnson, I think if any of those fought each other, it's sort of like the winner's back in the mix and back in the hunt for a serious fight. But the loser, possibly the end of the road, to be totally honest. I think, with age and losses already on the record, I think it could be that for them. Michael, this comment, I don't know if you saw me sniggering a few minutes ago when you first put it in, but that is so true. Almost does only go in horseshoes and hand grenades. So, yeah, that did make me laugh. And, yeah, Arthur Johnson, it's a great fight. It's bubbling away. I mean, that's the one thing that I think Buatsy's missed out on, hasn't he? I mean, and Yard to an extent, although Yard had Arthur. They've not, I know Buatsy had Craig Richards but that big, huge domestic fight that captures the attention of the public, they've not had that, have they? And there's enough light heavyweights for us to get those fights that, really capture the public's imagination. And we've not seen it, have we, Ray?
No, we haven't. We haven't seen those big domestic fights, the ones that capture the imagination. I mean, Boatsy Richards was probably the closest one that we got to that. But these guys need to be in that. These guys need to be in that, particularly in the sense that Lyndon Arthur needs to come back and show that the win against Anthony Yarde wasn't a fluke. Callum Johnson needs to just stay relevant, because people now are just saying, well, he's getting on a bit now. He's inactive. apart from his power, what else has he got? So it's a great fight for them both. It shouldn't be a difficult fight to make. They're with, as far as we know, they're still with the same promoter. So that's the type of fight that BT need to revive themselves and to revive Frank Warren.
No, I agree. I mean, I think we'll wrap it up there, guys. We're aiming for an hour. We've done it, but guys, every Sunday certainly for the foreseeable future, we're going to be on here at 8:30. So don't forget. Also, we've got lots of great stuff. Ray's not going to be with us this week, but don't worry. I've got some content coming. Wednesday night, we've got Levi Giles on. He'll be talking about his English title fight. So I'm really excited for that one. And we've got all the build up to Chisora Pulev too. So, guys, join us. If you are still here and haven't, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for joining us.